Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 20th of June. We're back after our summer holidays and joining me is Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Newcomb.
News Editor Mark Hodgkinson.
Picked a hell of a day to quit drinking.
Audio Reviewer Ed Selley.
I'm a combat pilot, Will. I belong in the air.
And Mark Botwright.
Forget the fat lady.
So, England still in the Euros, it looks. I thought they were going out yesterday. I have to say, I thought it was going to be a draw, and that would have been it for you guys. Scraped through just with the skin of your teeth against the mighty Wales.
Would that have been it?
No, it would have been.
They would have been. They would have had to go and do something. Score like 86 goals against Slovakia.
No, because third place can get through.
Yeah, it's not
5
quite.
points
Wouldn't
would have
been
been
quite as fun. But fundamentally, it probably would if man owl hybrid Roy Hodgson hadn't actually managed to win that one yesterday. He'd have. I think he'd have been in a spotted bowler.
Yeah,
But the face rubbing
just a
would
bit.
have been glorious.
Yeah, and of course, no gloating. Yeah, I thought the home nations have done really well. I mean, did anybody see the Northern Ireland game?
I saw bits
really
of it. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Good to see the home nations doing well, and hopefully...
There's a good chance that all of them might qualify to the next round.
Well, I was just going to say, Steve, hopefully we'll still be talking about them next week when we're talking about the podcast. And we are 3 episodes into Top Gear. Now, it was the last podcast we did where we were discussing what we thought of the first one, and it didn't go down very well with us. And we're now on episode 3, so are they starting to get the act together? Ed?
I don't know. You see, you and I've seen your comments on episode 3. I thought episode 3 was far too disjointed. It's like, have a 6-minute video, have another 6-minute video, here's another 6-minute video. It had no overarching thing. It was just throwing stuff at the wall, see what stuck. I feel thus far the best of these 3 has been the second episode. I thought that cracking film about the McLaren at the beginning, some interesting messing about with the SUVs as sort of overarching theme. I actually quite liked that. I thought that was pretty effective. And as I've mentioned on a number of places, honestly, the use of guests in that sequence, it further emphasised, not only with this iteration of Top Gear, but with the previous iteration of Top Gear, how weak the guest in the studio section is.
Yeah, I don't think it's... And it seems to be overly long now because there's 2 guests or 3 guests. And yeah, for me, I would cut that bit out completely. I really enjoyed the films. But like you say, it was almost like, well, we need to get the 2 new boys in, Chris Harris and Rory Reid. We need to get them on the main show. They're doing a cracking job on Extra Gear. I don't know if anybody's caught up with Extra Gear, but there's some really interesting stuff on that. Going behind the scenes, there's a lot more of Sabrine and the other people in that. So yes, I agree with you. It was a little bit disjointed, as in, look at this film, look at this. The Ken Block thing was really quite funny. Yeah, I think Matt LeBlanc, he's turned it around for me, because I thought, why the hell have they got him in? But I love his dry humour. I love the fact that he's wit. It's just, I'm finding him really funny. The one I don't like is Evans, and I just do not like him whatsoever, because he can't talk cars. When he's describing the track, going round the track and stuff like this, he's not technical in any way, and he doesn't have to be overly technical, but at least Clarkson was quite humorous with his comments. And he just shouts. Don't know if anybody else has caught that, but everything has to be an enthusiastic shout. Yes, let's be excited.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, I suppose that the problem is that they don't really have any time. I mean, if we consider that the first series of the hangar-based Top Gear has almost been completely expunged from history, they were sufficiently unsatisfied with it. I dare say they don't have the time or the patience of others for that to be the case. There's still a degree of experimentation going on, so we'll, I guess we shall see.
It's looking better than the first episode. I thought the first episode was not good.
That was a mess.
Yeah,
there's no question.
It was not good at all. So yeah, like you say, we'll see where it goes. I think there's only the 2 of us on this podcast that are interested anyway, Ed. But it's interesting that Chris Harris has been given his own internet channel on the Top Gear website as well. So
let's face it, he's quite good at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to stress that obviously by the time this goes out, it will have happened. But I mean, I have been. We're now into the full Le Mans qualifying and practice phase, and I will be all ready and good to go at 2 o'clock on the Saturday. And still greatest motor race on earth. Absolutely fantastic. Wet qualifying last night was absolutely magnificent.
That sounds so wrong.
That just does sound a bit iffy.
Qualify for
toddlers.
wetness.
Well, it wasn't. It was night qualifying 1, but it was done in torrential rain.
Is that sponsored by Pampers?
Yes, it was. Well, actually, Tenor Lady. They
At least you
Beat
said
out.
wet rather than.
I think your lightning strike, Ed, is having effects on the audio quality on this podcast at the minute. There must be some energy still in the system there, because you're sounding quite electric.
Am I? Oh, right, fine. Well, Withers down.
Yeah,
once
but
again, if you had to
but
guess
Withers
which
is
one
in
of us had
1955.
lost the better part of his internet, it would be Withers.
Yeah, well, he's permanently 1955. Mind you, he's had
55.
Yeah, mind you, he's had 2 weeks off where he hasn't been bullied, so he should be feeling dapper, you know?
Yeah, much better, thanks.
He sounds almost convinced. That's the whole classic point. Yes, darling, I'm fine. Go away and think about what you've done.
When you said about bullying, I sort of flinched for a second, like, you know, when kids, you feint to hit somebody and then you whack them with the right hand and smack them with the left when they're not expecting it. I was just waiting for the punch.
Okay, well, we'll turn our attention to Hodge and we'll bully him for the next week.
Before we go on, boys, and this is really aimed at Ed and Hodge, how good is season 6 of Game of Thrones?
I
Well,
think it's the best one
finally,
since.
finally, it's starting. I thought it had a real lull in the middle, if I'm honest, after the episode entitled "The Door."
Yeah.
But now it's looking like it's going to be a healthy end 3 episodes.
Oh, I looked at the trailer for next week for the Battle of the Bastards. Oh my god!
It's a great title for an
See where the
episode, isn't
budget's
it?
gone.
That almost sounds like the AVForums podcast.
It is a great title for an episode, the Battle of the Bastards. Jon Snow against Ramsay Snow.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this one more than any since, I don't know, season 2 perhaps.
Yeah, it's been really strong.
And what's the boob to bum ratio on this one?
minimal?
Less, actually, isn't it?
Actually, yeah, and also for fans of equal equality nudity, there was a scene a couple of episodes ago which just started with a really
good
close-up
gratuitous.
shot of a knob.
That end, basically, right at the camera, which was shocking, even for me.
What do you mean, even for you? Are you
Well,
used to
no,
seeing stuff, watching stuff like that, Steve?
Look in the mirror every day.
That's going to be.
Well, I don't look at it in the mirror every day, Mark. Perhaps you do.
Right, I think we need to move things along.
You need 2 mirrors anyway.
Rallies. Right, let's move on. Hardware news, and some new AV receivers were launched in Malta. It doesn't seem like the right place to do that. It is if you're going on a jolly, but AV receivers normally live in dark rooms with projectors and everything else, or big TVs where you're antisocial and you sit and watch movies. It was obviously a jolly, Steve.
Absolutely not. It was a hard-working 3 days in Malta during the sun.
Yeah, hey.
And
You're talking to somebody that's been on a Denon and Marantz trip before. It's one morning of work, and the rest of the time you probably
Whenever I go on one of these press trips, Laura always says, you know, are you offered to a trip to the island of Freebie? And this time I was actually on an island as well, so it really was the island of Freebie. Yes, in Malta, and you're right, Phil, there were a few demos in some quite dark rooms. I tell you what, when you walk out one of those demos into bright sunlight, it's quite shocking. You appreciate it.
Did you have your hat there? Because I know that
I
like if the sun touches your head, you just explode normally.
I had to borrow the PR's hat. Seriously. He had hair, so I thought my need was greater. But
Do we not sell hats on Malta?
well, yeah.
Did you give it back at the end, or did you
Yes,
just
I
run
did.
off
I
with it?
did.
I'm
give it-
keeping that.
Anyway, so yes, off to Malta to see the new line. Now, obviously, and I sort of sympathise a bit with Denon and Marantz because last year's lineup was particularly strong. In terms of feature set, they're as far as I'm aware, still the only receiver manufacturer that does all 3 formats, so Dolby Atmos, DTSX, and Auro 3D. So they were doing all of that already. They also had full support for HDCP 2.2, HDR, Rec 2020. So their receivers were well specified, well featured, and future proofed. So you're kind of thinking, what can they do to add this year? And I think they were aware of that fact too. So they were very much pushing the whole idea of improving their performance because the feature set was already pretty solid. In terms of the lineup that they've got in terms of new features, then what they have managed to squeeze in this year, certainly on the 2 top-end Denon receivers and the top Marantz receiver and the Marantz processor, they've added in HEOS. So HEOS is Denon and Marantz's. It's actually branded HEOS by Denon, and it's their multi-room system. So what they're doing is basically taking that from a separate brand and also integrating it in some of their other products as well, much like Yamaha have done with MusicCast. So HEOS is now going to be integrated into certain products of theirs, so you can use it as part of a multi-room system, which is great because HEOS is a really good system, and I quite liked it when I reviewed it. They've also got the latest version of Odyssey. So what's happened is Odyssey basically dropped the Odyssey Pro aspect, which was where you would buy a expensive kit. It was quite expensive, like $500 I think it was, for a calibrated mic and a stand and all this other stuff that you could do pro installations with Odyssey XT32.
And it does make a big difference because I've used the Pro installation.
Yeah, is it quite effective?
Yeah, it really, it's far better than that little plastic microphone that you get because you're using a proper, calibrated microphone and stuff. So it's a couple of degrees better, I would say.
I don't know how they're going to get around the aspect of the microphone, because obviously this is a new app that they've launched. It's called the Odyssey app. It allows anyone, including your average user, to actually take advantage of a lot of the features that were in Pro on this app. So things like seeing more, you've got more control over the EQ. You've got more graphical interface to see what's going on. It's going to be available in October, I believe, for €19.99, so something about 15 to 20 quid, I guess, which is a lot less than you would have paid for Pro. So I think you still have the aspect of having to find a calibrated mic, but the releasing it as an app, obviously that's a step towards the modern age, I guess. But I think it will go down well with a lot of users, because it will give them access to a lot more functionality with Odyssey than they currently have just through the receiver. So that's an interesting new feature.
Yeah, I mean that's going to add another degree of complexity, but performance as well. If they're adding the Pro stuff, it'll be interesting to test that out and see exactly how it works. Yeah. Now
I should stress that this is only going to be on the new stuff. Presumably this is because it's introduced by Odyssey themselves. So if you've got existing AVR from Denon and Marantz, I mean, and even the X7200, which is still going to remain the flagship for Denon for this year and into next year, that's not going to, that won't have Odyssey app. So that's only going to be on the new receivers. In terms of the lineup, interesting for Denon, they've got a new, not exactly flagship, because as I said, the X700 is still the flagship model, but just below that is the X6300H. So the H denotes it has HEOS built in. It also has 11 channels of built-in amplifications. So that's great. You've got a single box solution for immersive audio, and I reckon that's going to go down very well. It's 1,000.
What are they saying in terms of power?
They're saying 200 watts per channel. Now, I suspect that is not the case. There might be per one channel being driven to the limits.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they're interested to see how powerful it actually manages to be with all those channels built into one single box. And it isn't a huge receiver either. It's smaller than the 7200, which uses monoblocks anyway. But £1,899 suggested price. Yes, it's coming out in October. And I think that's going to be very popular. I
did the X6200 last year. I reviewed that. Actually, I reviewed it this year, back in April. It's a tiny little box compared to other AV receivers. I found the actual size of the unit, when I put it out of the box, I'm thinking, this is not going to drive the M&Ks. Deceptively small looking. And I've got to say, one of the most powerful little AVRs that I've used in this room with, like I say, running the M&Ks and running the Teufel speakers through them. Both of them 4-ohm loads, although the M&Ks are a bit more sensitive, but had no problems whatsoever driving them. And certainly was on a level par in terms of power output to the reference 3050 that we have in here from Yamaha. So if they keep it running that way and can add another, what was it? It was 9 channels.
That was 9 channels. They've added 2 more basically.
So if they can add 2 more to that, and it's the same quality, then it shouldn't have that many issues driving, to be honest. No. And 4 of them are obviously going to be smaller speakers anyway, either upward firing or placed on the ceiling.
Yeah, I think this could be a big seller for Denon. I think it'd be very popular with enthusiasts.
The only thing with Denon, I don't know if Ed will agree with me on this one as well, because we'll have to let everybody know that Ed's passed with Yamaha and so on. So, but I always find Denon to be quite a warm sounding AV receiver. Have you found that compared to the likes of Yamaha and so on?
To an extent, yeah. Certainly, the more premium models I always felt was a bit warmer and a bit fuller. Although not catastrophic. Let me try that as a sentence. Since Yamaha switched to the current chassis, which they've used for the 3030, 3040, and now the 3050, and later on this year the 3060. It's the basic layout is the same. I think that they've become a little bit less sort of warm and cuddly, and at the same time, although I haven't had as much time playing with the latest iterations of Denon AV receivers as you guys have, I've not actually, for example, heard one in my own room, only in some other people's. I felt that they've also sounded a bit more sort of grunty, whereas conversely, since they switched to Class D, I think that Pioneer AV receivers have become an awful lot warmer and smoother than they used to be. They used to be quite aggressive, and that now literally leaves Onkyo as the last people that do a real in-your-face, pin you to the sofa sort of presentation, which can be quite exciting for sort of short listens, but I tend to find it gets a bit fatiguing over time. But I think both Denon and Marantz have. I would agree with you to an extent, Phil. I just think that over the last couple of years, I think that actually moving in different directions, it's now increasingly difficult to get any real to make real claims about what that's X and that's Y. I find that actually Pioneer, Yamaha, and then the D&M receivers, they're actually quite consistent across all of them now.
It's interesting what you say about the Pioneers, the most recent ones. I haven't heard any of the most recent ones. The last one I really heard in great detail was the Susano. Remember that one, the big flagship, and it was the first one to use Class D, Ice Power as they called it. Yeah. And that sounded amazing. So if that has moved into the Pioneers, like I say, I haven't heard them recently. You have, Steve, though.
Yeah.
And I had one.
It was powerful but refined, I think, were the words that I used, and I agree with Ed totally that there's been a shift away from what they used to be very, very muscular in your face performance to something that's a lot more refined from Pioneer, and I was very impressed with the LX89.
They used to be
Pioneer
really
quite bright.
thrown
a lot of money at Class D, and it really is paying off. And their stereo amps are using it as well, and are just as effective.
Cool. So that's the Denon and Marantz launch in Malta. The PCs are up on the homepage. They'll still be there when you listen to this podcast on the Monday. Obviously, we're recording this on
can I just
Friday.
say, somebody read both articles and said, it says a deja vu there. It's not my fault. It's just Denon and Marantz. Obviously, it's the same group, D&M, and they do use the same platform for all. They do sound different, but they use the same platform for both Denon and Marantz receivers. So there is a lot of similarity between the two lineups.
Yeah. And like you said, it was one side of the room was Denon and one side of the room is Marantz, which is always the way that happens at these launches. And
they had a fight halfway through. It was
I've never seen that bit yet, but yeah, they're famous for one morning of work and then the rest of the time spent in the sunshine. So nice to see that they haven't changed their routine when it comes to press trips, Steve, and that you had
more time on a boat than I did in the.
Yeah, but you see, I probably had better weather the whole week than you did up in Scotland.
Oh, you were insanely lucky with your weather last week. Insanely lucky.
Just a bit, but not so lucky with the midges because I was bitten to hell. But there you go. That's what you get this time of the year up there. So let's move things along. And Sky Cinema is launching with UHD movies included. Tell us more, Mark.
So this is a rebranding and upgrading of Sky Movie offer. So it launches on the 8th of July. It'll cost you nothing more if you're with Sky or Virgin package. And it sounds quite exciting, I have to say. I've only subscribed to Sky Movies very briefly through Now TV on an offer, and I wasn't very impressed with the quality, to be quite honest, but this is sounding quite tempting. First of all, they've a 75% increase of premieres. So they're showing one every day now. So that's quite good.
But is it really? Because
is it? I don't know.
If they're showing a new one,
see how it works out in practice, I guess.
If
but it sounds quite good, doesn't it?
It's going to be straight to video rubbish a lot of the time, isn't it? Really, if you think about it, because there's not that many movies released.
I was going to say, there isn't that. I mean, one a day.
Yeah, well, they've also they're going into a bit of world cinema, aren't they? Which obviously gives
well,
them
there you go.
For
It's
more premieres.
Yeah.
So that's something else they're adding is the world cinema slot.
Will they be stealing some of those quality releases off the Sci-Fi Channel? Friday night?
Oh, some of them have been pretty
atrocious. That's fantastic. They must have spent thousands of dollars on that, and most of it on the catering budget.
There was one about dinosaurs or something or other that I just happened to be flicking through the channels, and oh my god, it was bad.
Well, I couldn't vouch for any of those, but the three they named as part of the World Cinema is El Ardor from Argentina, Thebe from the UAE, and Tangerines from Estonia, which I believe is
all high on my list of places.
Wow!
So I think we're all looking forward to Thebe.
So really, what we're talking about is probably one major Hollywood release a week, like they have been doing, and the rest will be filled in with tat they can get from elsewhere.
So, and they're also increasing the number of movies available to around 1,200, which is, I believe, a 20% increase on what they've got at the minute.
Is that on demand?
On demand, yeah. And they're also touting the fact that they're the only subscription service that lets you download all movies. I believe Amazon lets you download some. I don't know how useful that is. It wouldn't be particularly useful to me, but I guess if you're going away on holiday or something, I'm going to keep the kids happy. That might be quite useful. I guess the most exciting
thing... It would be useful for you.
It wouldn't be useful for me, but
keeping your kids happy.
No, they don't really sit and watch a movie, unfortunately. But even hyperactive. Probably the most exciting news is that Sky Q customers will get Ultra HD movies. I'm not sure whether that's at some point in 2016. So, but before the end of the year, which is good. It's another source.
Have they said
Netflix
how many?
And Amazon are lacking in Ultra HD movies. They've got good, they've got TV programs, but not many movies as part of the subscription.
Have they said how many?
No.
No, it's a bit light on detail, wasn't it?
So again, once we cut through the PR, there's not actually a hell of a lot there. And
at least
have they said anything about the AV quality? Are they going to up the compression rates, and are they going to add proper HD audio?
I was just coming to that. I don't know about HD audio, but they're improving the dynamic range of the audio. I know we've actually had threads on the forum about this, complaining about the quality of the audio in Sky movies, how it's lifeless and dull. So they're increasing the dynamic range in some unknown way. But yes, they are improving the video quality of the standard
time,
HD.
isn't it terrible?
Yeah,
it's shocking.
It's
that's what
bad.
put me off subscribing. Really bad. Through a Now TV box, you get 720p at 30 hertz output, I think, which doesn't look great. So I don't know whether they're going to do a proper.
Well, it never looked great on the subscription channels, because I had them I used to take the free offers now and again when I had Sky, and they all look really, really bad. Compression artifacts everywhere, a lot of blockiness, especially in mixed scenes where you got dark and bright in the same scene. Now it turned into a blocky mess a lot of the time.
Yeah, that was totally my experience of Sky movies, to be quite honest. So they've made changes to their encoder, and hopefully they're going to be upping the bit rate of the output as well. So we'll wait and see how it looks, but it sounds quite promising. And that's about your lot, really.
I suppose it's something. I mean, it would be nice if there was more of a sort of timeline for some of the promised features. But I, for one, am looking forward to some top-flight Estonian cinema.
It does
there's going to be more pop-up channels. When they have feature channels, like they have a Star Wars channel and a Harry Potter channel and various actors and a Marvel pop-up channel. I don't know. They tend to last for sort of a month, 6 weeks. Is that right, Ed? I'm not altogether sure.
Yeah, it seems to vary. I mean, I have to say, it's interesting talking about the quality issues with Sky movies. I have found on the relatively small screen that I use, the picture isn't stunning. It's sufficient. Where qualitatively they have been dreadful is, I mean, the sonic mix is all over the shop. I've essentially had to put in a set of presets on the AV receiver for watching Sky movies, which essentially jacks the center channel up a good sort of 7 or 8 levels over where it would be for any more sort of conventional viewing. I mean, the quality of dialogue reproduction on it is truly appalling. So any improvements there, I mean, to the extent where this isn't me being an AV snob and being critical of it, my wife has basically said we might as well cancel this because it's fundamentally unusable.
Yeah. It's terrible.
See that in the advertising
terrible.
Then? Fundamentally unusable. Looks like to me, I mean, I'm not a Sky customer, as we all know, but reading that press release, they basically rebranded it, and they're trying to give you something they should have been giving you in the first place, i.e. give you some picture and sound, and also promising something down the line, sometime never. Oh, and by the way, Ultra HD at some point. No mention of HDR or anything else, just Ultra HD at some point. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got all this already at home. on Blu-ray in superb quality. So I couldn't give a monkeys.
Okay.
I can do a Star Wars season if I want to anytime I like.
Good for you. Okay, so that's Sky. Moving things on swiftly, and you don't have to go into this in any great detail, Steve, because the review is up there for people to read. But the KS9500, it's Samsung's flagship TV. We had the exclusive.
We did indeed. Much to our surprise, we got the exclusive worldwide, I believe. The UE65KS9500 Ultra HD 4K TV, SUHD as they like to call it. Obviously, in terms of feature set, essentially the same as the 9000, but the big difference, obviously, is this has got a full array backlight with local dimming. And if you'd seen last year's JS9500, which was a stonking telly, and probably the best of the, up there, sitting best one or two of the LED LCD flagship models. Really great, ahead of its time, in fact, because a lot of its performance, would have met the standards for this year's Ultra HD Premium certification. So that was I think from Samsung's perspective, they had to sort of like, well, what can we do next? Because we've already got a really good TV, but this one takes it to the next level, refines it, stunning picture quality, really effective local dimming, lovely screen uniformity, tiny bit of banding on the football, I have to say, but I've yet to see a TV that uses a full array backlight with LEDs behind the panel that hasn't got a little bit of banding. I think it's just inevitable because of the nature of the fact that the LEDs are directly behind the panel in rows. So there's a little bit of that, but not excessive. And overall, yeah, absolutely stonking. It was fantastic performance with Ultra HD HDR. Really looked good. Really impressive on that. Things like the Revenant looked absolutely stunning. So all in all, a very, very solid performer. 9 out of 10 across the board, in fact, I think on the scores. And highly recommended. Fantastic telly.
Okay, and obviously middle of the month at the minute, so what else have we got coming up before the end of the month, TV-wise, from you?
For me personally, we've got the, finally, LG 55C6 arrived this week. And at some point, possibly during recording this podcast, the 75-inch DX94 from Sony. Okay,
cool. So let's move on. Let's go to E3. It's the biggest gaming show of the year, Mark. And what are the big headline news to take out of this year's show?
Big news from E3, hardware-wise, would be Microsoft showing off new Xboxes. You've got the Xbox One S, which is a smaller, revised version of their Xbox One console. Purported to be 40% smaller. Nice slimmed down, but I guess from an AV perspective, the biggest news would be it's going to have a UHD Blu-ray drive in it and HDR compatible. And that will be not only just for films, but also for games as well. So they're going to be pushing things like Gears of War 4 and Forza Horizon 3 to take advantage of HDR. It's also rolling out fairly soonish. You'll have 3 different SKUs. There'll be a 500 gigabyte version, which is touted at $299, a 1 terabyte version at $349, and a 2 terabyte version at $399. It'll be the latter variant that will be out in August, so they're obviously staggering these releases. And also, what piqued my interest was there's no Kinect port on it, so they're kind of finally cutting off the old style Xbox One and trying to almost draw a line underneath it. No great bump in terms of power. There will be a minimal processing upgrade, but apparently that's not going to be used for games at all. That will literally just be used for helping upscale and with HDR. Other than that, they were kind of pushing cross-buy, cross-play, things like that. But then I hadn't expected to see it, but Project Scorpio, the kind of next version of the Xbox One, was shown off. Well, at least it was touted. 6 teraflops, true 4K gaming. That's questionable. Should be out late next year. Various forms of kind of mixed messaging. No one's fully sure whether there will be exclusives for this, how much it is a console that's going to be backwards compatible, or how much they've designed it with forwards compatibility in mind. But they're also jumping on the VR bandwagon, and so yes, should be an interesting year ahead from them.
Okay, well, it looks like Ed's lightning strike's having an effect on the Skype quality there, Mark. Either that or you got a rubbish internet connection.
How dare you?
Possibly a combination of the two.
And I bet Steve's got something to do with it, because Steve always has something to do with it. Right, so that's the E3 roundup. I guess the interesting thing there, guys, is HDR and 4K coming to the consoles, and the price points that these consoles are going to be.
Big news, I think. But forget the gaming stuff. If you can get an Xbox One for those kind of prices with a Ultra HD Blu-ray player and your HDR support built in,
compared to a Samsung UHD player or a Panasonic UHD player, yep, makes sense.
I mean, how embarrassed must Sony be?
Yeah, that's true.
Frankly, they're looking like right idiots at the moment, aren't they? I mean, you invented the format and you can't even deliver a player, and they're sticking in Xbox One.
But bear in mind that the cheapest variant of that Xbox One S might be out around the same time as the PlayStation 4K PS Neo. So, it seems very much like Microsoft have reacted to this and quickly put something together. But yeah, it is slightly embarrassing for Sony, as you would think that they'd be kind of leading the charge on that front.
What might put me off for the Xbox being a player is the noise. Because even though the Xbox One is considerably quieter than the 360, it's not what I'd call quiet enough to play a disc. So we'd have to wait and see about that.
You just turn the audio system up.
I can still hear it.
I was going to say that's actually one of the kind of selling points for me for the Xbox One is the mine's kind of absolutely whisper quiet.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe I should send mine back.
No, send yours back. That's one of the kind of main things. Everyone.
It's definitely not a whisper quiet.
Didn't even know you had an Xbox One, Mark. I thought you had a PS4.
No, I didn't. No, I got an Xbox.
It'll be interesting to see though whether the One S is still as quiet, simply because the whole claims. Well, 40% smaller. To
built-in
start
power
with,
supply.
Yeah, that's a bit of a strange claim, because I'm assuming that a fair amount of that is to do with the fact they've internalized that power block. So it's a little bit like a man eating his own foot and claiming that he's slimmed down or something. It's just a little bit odd. It doesn't look, from various different angles, it doesn't look that much smaller, but that's going to have a huge effect on heat for the internals of the console. But at least this, sad as it sounds, one thing I'm glad to see is they've stuck on a front USB port and a proper power button. Other than that, that
is it only available in white?
Yes, it looks like it's covered in.
Right off, frankly.
It looks like it's covered in Diamante as well, in a weird way. Designed by Liberace. I'm not
linked up by Liberace.
Yeah,
I'm
sure they'll bring out other colours. They're bound to. Not at launch necessarily.
Anyway,
later down the line.
I do think that the release of a relatively cheap, and compared to the two existing Ultra HD Blu-ray players, a relatively cheap games console with Ultra HD Blu-ray built in, that's big news, because that's going to really help push it as a format, I think.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But because up to now it has been relatively expensive. Plus, also, not only have they been expensive, but they've been difficult. I know that, for example, the UB900 is out of stock. It's just sold out. I've got a friend of mine who's been trying to buy one for months and just can't get hold of one. So clearly, there's limited supply and they're expensive. So having Microsoft shipping out those of Xbox Ones with Ultra HD Blu-ray built in would be.
That's why there's no UB900s. They bought all the drives.
Yeah, might well be the case.
Anyway, that's E3 roundup, and to round up on hardware, Ed's going to talk about audio, specifically Apple Music, and what's happening with it, Ed.
In audio terms, ironically, not a huge amount. This was something that was flagged up from the Apple Developers Conference. I don't watch that on a live basis. It's in the same way that I don't watch evangelical preachers. I find both things fairly.
I think between the four of us, we could all come up with the buzzwords that they use. Yeah.
Oh, sure. But nonetheless,
just don't drink the Kool-Aid. That's all.
Well, after Apple Music has been in the market roughly a year now, and there were some changes announced to it. Now, most of these are interface based, and if you wanted further sort of fuel for the fire that Apple has ceased to be a true innovator and is now, generally speaking, a very, very competent reactionary company, there wasn't a huge amount to dispel any of that thinking in terms of what they've done to Apple Music. Most of the changes come to slimming the interface down. All this talk about the sort of interface with the artists and the rest of it, that specific sort of channel section, that's not going away, but it's being hidden off the main interface. But the good news is, and this is a big deal, I'm sure, for all of you listening here, is that there's now a lyrics function, so you can sing along. I mean, I for one am just over the moon with that. It was telling and not altogether unexpected, but it's abundantly clear that Apple sees Spotify as pretty much the competition, and these the alterations are seemingly geared to making it a bit more like Spotify, and sort of making use of some of the features that Spotify has seemingly found quite successful.
Ed, I know what you're saying about the lyric feature, but it used to be when I bought a new album, there used to be lyrics in the gatefold or whatever, and you would sit and actually listen to the track and the lyrics, because you wanted to know sometimes, especially if it's a Manic Street Preachers
Have a
song.
little look at YouTube video hits for like lyric versions of music videos, often above the actual official music video.
Yeah, because people want to know what the song's about. They want to see what the lyrics are.
You can't hear the words these days.
On occasions, I am intrigued to see what someone is saying. But then, generally speaking, I'll type in song name and lyrics, and they instantly, I've got it. It's not something I have ever been listening to a streaming service, and I absolutely must see the lyrics now.
But if you're having a karaoke party...
you do.
I tell you what, for years I thought motorcycle emptiness was modus I call emptiness. And also in Wonderful, It's a Wonderful World, where he says, "And the dark sacred night," I thought it was "And the dogs say good night."
Yeah, there's a whole Peter Kay sketch on misheard lyrics, which is, if you haven't seen it, it'll have you in tears. Yeah.
So I think it's safe to say that it was highly unlikely that they would do something like offer us a significant step up in quality, but nonetheless it was pretty timid what was offered. So it does seem to be that it's now fundamentally a case of just offering some widgets to go with your compressed music, and we're good to go. I mean, I will say one of the products which is being reviewed this month, actually it's a pair of them, it's these little Audio Quest Dragonfly DACs, which plug directly into your computer. Immediately, they have benefit. I mean, Tidal has got it's got a setting in Windows, and I believe on the Mac as well, where it can communicate directly with the USB DAC and bypass the kernel audio of the actual operating system, and that in itself is a very big. Simply removing notification noises from your music is a significant one. And I don't think that's a particularly expensive or complicated one. But to the best of my knowledge, Tidal is still the only service that offers that. Which, it's not, we're not even talking about necessarily jumping the benefits to lossless and all that entails. Just there's some really simple quick fixes which other services don't seem to bother with.
Anybody interested in the karaoke mode then?
Well, surely I've had a lot to drink.
If it isn't a pure karaoke, because it's not like it can remove the lyrics.
My kids might be.
And Mark.
So Mark,
No, I'm not interested, obviously.
Mark, you'll be staying well away from it then.
Yeah, she's probably getting it touted to her through her iPod anyway. She'll be on at me, no doubt. She's got a Tidal on there. She can make do with that.
She can make do with Tidal.
Make do with Tidal.
Anyway, that's our hardware news for this week. We'll move on swiftly because have we got a review? Maybe we have. Yeah, movie reviews next. So, what's at the cinema, Steve?
What's at the cinema? Oh, Gods of Egypt, which will doubtless be appearing on Sky Cinema quite soon as a premiere, because it's rubbish. One of their daily premieres. Yeah, it opened in the States about 3 months ago, so it's taken its time to get to this country for good reason, which is it didn't do very well in America. Mark saw the trailer, I think. You say to me yesterday, I saw the trailer.
I didn't really need to read your review. I almost knew what it was going to say before.
Yeah. Yes, it's a fantasy film that takes as a basis for its plot Egyptian myths and then builds a story around that. Now, in principle, that doesn't sound too bad because, I mean, I think most of us are probably not familiar with Egyptian myths. Therefore, there'd be a whole new series of creatures and characters and situations that they could bring in that would be new to a majority of worldwide audiences, apart from maybe people in Egypt. Unfortunately, a couple of things here. One, despite being set in Egypt and being called Gods of Egypt, the entire cast is Caucasian, apart from one character, and no one in it is remotely Egyptian. And then you could say in the case of the gods, that's fine because they're 9 feet tall and clearly morph into giant armored animals at various points in the film. So you could say, well, they're not really human beings anyway. But I'm assuming all the mortals are meant to be Egyptians. The fact that they're all Aussies basically, because that's where it was made in Australia. is a little bit insulting. So I think it's culturally slightly insensitive, but I could accept. I wouldn't really give a damn about that if it was a good film. But unfortunately, it's just a classic example of a modern blockbuster, or attempt at a blockbuster. You know, it's vacuous and soulless. It's joyless. It has no charm at all. And with fantasy, I think the key ingredient has to be charm. If you look at Jason and the Argonauts, or the original Clash of the Titans, you know, yes, the effects look a bit ropey now, you know, the old stop motion. Yes, the acting is terrible and the plots aren't necessarily the best, but my God, they were packed with charm. And you just really enjoyed them. As a kid, I absolutely loved them. This is just CGI fest. Everything looks fake and CGI, and even the real people don't look real half the time. It's just, you know, it's just that classic example of a modern film where it's awash with CGI to try and make up for the fact it hasn't got a particularly good story or good dialogue or even decent acting. And the cast, but Gerald Butler, who, let's be honest, hasn't done a decent film since 300, he really should get a new agent. Basically, he's just hanging around doing his usual Brian Blessed impression, shouting a lot. You've got Nicholas Walder Costo, I can't pronounce his name. Costa Waldau, thank you. Yes, Jamie Lannister from Game of Thrones, who's to know we're running back with his tail between his legs to go back to that show again, where they do fantasy properly. And a few other characters, but it's got it's got people like Brian Brown, because it's made in Australia, Brian Brown and Geoffrey Rush pop up, and probably should know better. But the weird thing is, it's like anything. When you take something mythical and magical and make it literal on screen, it often just looks silly. So the sight of Geoffrey Rush basically sailing a ship, towing the sun around a flat Earth, just looks faintly ludicrous when you actually see it on screen. So yes, no charm, no fun, no good. There you go.
Okay, at least you're honest, you know. And
although I will say, the Ultra HD Blu-ray, absolutely spectacular. But come back to that
but now we're back to the old. Yeah, it was a terribly crap film, but yes, we're going to buy the disc because it's demo quality.
Oh, the DTSX soundtrack was blimey.
Right, so I'm assuming that you have bought this then on disc. Yeah.
You realise that they will never stop making dirge like this, or you go, well, actually, it's as much fun to watch as poking myself in the eye with a drawing pin, but the quality's really good.
Well, because it came out in the States 2 months ago, it's obviously hit Ultra HD Blu-ray now, and coincidentally, I got it this week, and obviously it opens at the cinema today as a day of recording it. So I thought, that's convenient. I'll do the cinema review then. So it looked and sounded stunning, but not a great film.
Yeah, so one for, but there's so few UHD discs that I imagine it's going to do pretty well sales-wise.
It probably will. Whether people will get through the entire film is another question, but it probably sells.
Yeah, that doesn't set a very good precedent, does it, if it's still making money?
Actually, we'll come back to when we do the roundup. I'll talk about what's coming out, because there have actually been some decent announcements recently, so there's some good stuff on the
Okay, right. So this Friday, what can we go and see? And I've got a funny feeling that
soulless CGI fests.
Yeah, but I've got a funny feeling that Ed might actually go to the cinema to see this one.
That's very dependent on just events not pertaining to the film. I've secured the promise of childcare to go out and see it, but it depends if the boys has to have a fairly significant injection the day before. So we'll see how he's doing. But this film, I don't know. I'll be interested. It hinges on whether it's charmless or not, I guess, is the kicker for this.
Yeah, if it's fun and charming, even if it's silly.
I hope it's silly.
Mind.
I want it to be, so stupid.
I think it's a safe bet. It's good. I've seen the trailer. I mean, the spaceships this time were the size of the moon.
Yeah, but the fact that, again, I'll keep coming back to it, but I still haven't seen an explanation for it. Brent Spiner's character is suddenly alive again.
Well, my Ultra HD Blu-ray of Independence Day arrived this week, so I'm going to watch that on Saturday, and then go and see it on Thursday night when it opens. So we'll see if they can conveniently explain his resurrection, unless, of course, he is just a second coming. Maybe that's how they save us from the aliens at the end. Although I like the way Ed said, not events not pertaining to the film. What, you mean, like an alien invasion? Is that what stopped you from going to the cinema?
Anybody else excited about this one? Mr. Botwright?
No.
Hodge?
No, not especially, no. I remember that I quite enjoyed the original one. I went to the cinema to see it. I won't be going to the cinema to see this one, but
the original was great fun, and you know what you're going to get from a Emmerich film, don't you? Yeah. I mean, before that, what was it? Stargate.
Actually, Stargate was the film I was thinking about when I was watching Gods of Egypt, because I thought, well, they did it right. They had Egyptian god myths mixed in with that, and in a fun, charming way. it did make me want to watch that film again, because I thought, well, actually, that was that's how you do it. That was fun and entertaining and a bit silly, but it still had a degree of charm to it and a likable cast.
Yep.
Always important.
Yeah, no, it's still a good film.
Yeah, so basically, we can pretty much be rest assured that Emmerich will blow up some world monuments and landmarks.
If there's any left, because I think
it's London in the trailer, so that's one gone for a start.
But I thought everyone was trashed in the first movie again.
Yeah, I got to say, he hasn't got much left. He hasn't already smashed to bits, has it?
Maybe we've rebuilt it.
It has been 20 years.
I'd like to see the guy on the Houses of Parliament putting in the last brick. Not again.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
It took them 10 years to rebuild not rebuild, but replace the Twin Towers. So I'm thinking 20 years.
I thought you were going to say the Death Star.
Well, they did that really quickly, didn't they? Second one, they did. Must have used more contract workers on that, I think. Anyway,
Yeah.
So yes, Independence Day Resurgence will be hitting our screens in a week.
I'm intrigued enough that if I'm completely and utterly bored, I might actually venture out.
That's a great testament, isn't it? If I've got nothing else to do and I'm really bored and I've got, that it's my last resort, I might go and see Independence Day Resurgence.
Hey, I can't make any more promises than that. Busy man, Okay, so what can we buy on Blu-ray if people are still buying Blu-rays and not going to UHD?
Yeah, that's true. For those that still buy Blu-rays, actually not much out this week. I don't think that's anything to do with Ultra HD Blu-ray. I just think it's quite a week. But the only film of note that's coming out is Eureka, I believe, who are releasing the film Enemy Mine. I don't know if anyone remembers that from 1985.
I can picture
the
the
impression of Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I can picture the cover, but I'm not sure whether I actually watched it or not.
I did
sure
see
I had
it.
it in the disc.
I remember quite enjoying it. Although it's a slightly strange film. It's basically about a human star pilot who crashes on an alien planet,
I've seen that.
with an alien who they shot each other down basically, and they sort of have to survive by becoming
Yeah,
friends.
I've seen it. Yeah.
And it's Louis Gossett Jr. in makeup, looking like a sort of lizard, basically. And he gives birth, not through anything to do with Dennis Quaid, because it's one of the species that can, procreate asexual, I guess. And then Quaid has to help bring up the baby and all this sort of stuff. It's a strange film, but charming in its own way.
What happened to Dennis Quaid?
Dennis Quaid, yeah.
He's been quite a lot of stuff, doesn't he?
Yes, he used to be a bit of a star, and then it's fleeting fame, isn't it? Next thing you know, you're doing commercials. Anyway, that's out this week. So if you're a fan of that film from the mid '80s, and I can't believe it was 31 years ago now that it came out. That's really terrifying.
I've got to say, talking about
21 years since Independence Day. Or no, 20 years since Independence Day. It's just scary in itself.
Talking about actors that used to be famous and now doing commercials, I really quite like the Baldwin adverts at the minute. I don't know if
said BT have actually managed to get some good performances out. I mean, the Ryan Reynolds one was quite amusing as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've had the radio commercials. I've seen the TV ones, but I had the radio on yesterday in the car, and he was doing Ant and Dex. The lyrics to Ant and Dex song was hilarious, really funny.
And what? Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah. Watch us wreck the mic. Watch us wreck the mic. Psych. It's really funny.
So sadly, just the one film this week, Enemy Mine. So if that's something you remember fondly and want to watch again,
and if you want to read the review is in the movies section, the Blu-ray section. You can go and read that. Simon did that one, right? So, UHD Blu-ray roundup, Steve.
Yeah, it's been quite a few announcements since we last had a podcast. Basically, I think we mentioned already that Universal have piled in with their first list of films: Lucy, Lone Survivor, and The Huntsman, and best of all, Oblivion. Warner have announced some more titles. So they've got coming out in mid-July, we've got Man of Steel, we've got Batman vs. Superman extended cut. We've also got Watchmen coming. So there's basically 3 Zack Snyder movies that they've got coming out in the middle of July, which is interesting. I know I've seen Dolby Vision screening of Batman vs. Superman, which looked absolutely stunning. And we've both seen scenes from Man of Steel in demos, which also looked very impressive. So they should look great. This week, Paramount released their first 2 titles, which is Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. Really, really annoyingly, Star Trek Into Darkness was shot with a combination of 35mm IMAX, and the disc does that annoying changing aspect ratio bullshit. So it cuts from 35mm to IMAX. Now, obviously, in terms of picture quality, the IMAX stuff should look absolutely stunning in Ultra HD, but I just hate it when they shift the aspect ratio. Can they just leave it in one aspect ratio and then just shift between the formats? But anyway, that's out. In terms of other news, The Martian, which was the first double dip of Ultra HD Blu-ray, that came out 2 weeks ago as an extended cut. But interestingly, Fox did include a Dolby Atmos soundtrack to that, which wasn't on the original release. So it looks like Fox are really getting behind immersive audio in a big way now and using either Atmos, if there's an Atmos mix available originally from the theatrical release, or if there isn't an Atmos mix available, they're going for things like DTSX, because Independence Day has a DTSX soundtrack. Interestingly, the attach rates for buying players, with people buying new TVs, particularly this is the States rather than here, but in the States at least, 50%. So 50% of people buying a new Ultra HD TV have also been buying an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which I think can only get better with the news about the Xbox One having one built in. So certainly there's a good, obviously people have realised, if you want to watch stuff on your new Ultra HD TV, that's the best and easiest way of doing it.
Is that though? Sorry, but is that a lot of people buying them, or is that there being a lot of kind of incentivized deals and
could
bundles?
Be that as well. Because certainly Panasonic have been doing a deal in this country with the, if you can get hold of one, because it's sold out, but the UB900 was being offered at half price as a bundle with the DX902. So could be that. But I do think, everyone's talking about would it be a success, but I think it's actually been, relatively speaking, considering the Blu-ray itself was a bit of a niche, it's actually been quite successful. Other big news in terms of players is that Oppo have been very, very subtly plugging their upcoming player. It looks like it's going to be released on the 19th of January, and they're definitely working on an Ultra HD Blu-ray player of their own. And they sort of had a screenshot of the display with it saying 1/19/2017. So it looks like that's when they're going to be either announcing it or launching it. So that's interesting news for those of you who are fans of Oppo.
It's a long tease, isn't it?
Yeah, hell of a long tease.
Any Dolby Vision?
No mention about that. So, I mean, it's interesting that Oppo didn't mention that, but I think a lot of people are thinking that might be the case because obviously it's going to have it could have the right chipset. Interesting that Xbox One doesn't mention anything about Dolby Vision, so I'm guessing it doesn't support it. But Lionsgate yesterday as a day of re-recording this podcast, announced that they are supporting. Now they said they're supporting Dolby Vision. They didn't mention anything about disc specifically. And we've seen quite a few studios announce support, but it's been streaming based. So I know Warner's do on a streaming basis, and other studios have sort of said they're going to be supporting it. But what there's still a distinct lack of is any kind of announcements regarding an actual Dolby Vision encoded Ultra HD Blu-ray disc.
I guess there's no point until there's a Dolby Vision player.
Well, that's probably a factor. Yeah, absolutely, that's a factor. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out in terms of hardware. But there's quite a lot happening though within that space. There's definitely a lot of traction, more titles being announced, and a lot more day and date releases coming from studio. Basically, it looks like the only studio now that hasn't said a damn word is still Disney, which is a little bit annoying considering that they own Pixar, and Lucasfilm, and Marvel. But they still haven't said a word about the format or what their plans are. But everybody else is on board. And seems to be supporting it quite aggressively in some places. Certainly, it's the case of Sony and Warner's and Fox particularly are very behind the format. So,
okay, well, thank you, Steve Withers, European PR spokesman for the Ultra HD Blu-ray format. Okay, so that's a UHD Blu-ray roundup. Let's do competitions now because we forgot to do it at the start before we go into our movie chat. So, Mark, what have we got competition-wise?
Current competitions, we've got a copy of Stephen King's The Mist on Blu-ray, and that's available to active members until the 28th of June. So you better get your skates on. We've got the Noon VR headset, and that's open to all members until the 30th of June. And then probably the best prize, or multiple best prizes, are 5 pairs of Q Acoustics BT3 Bluetooth speakers, and that's available to all members until the 13th of July. And I've heard those, and they're very good.
Yeah, like almost everything Q Acoustics makes. They are ridiculous.
Yeah, they're really good.
And free is an astonishing price for them.
Yeah.
And congratulations, guys. Steve, you've officially turned 50. Well done. It's your birthday today.
You're denying it.
You're not 50.
I'm not
It's
denying it.
49.
I'm not, so I can't deny something that isn't. Yes, I'm 49.
You're 49. Oh.
So I'm only
bizarre-
3
by
years
bizarre
younger than you.
coincidence, Mark shares the same birthday as me.
Yeah, and I'm 46, just for the record.
Are you really?
Yeah, well, I will.
But you look a lot older.
I don't.
He's got more bloody hair than you.
I look a lot
I've
younger
got
than
boyish
you.
good, boyish
To be
good
fair,
look.
there are serious burns victims that have more hair than you. So
Am I paying for this abuse or is it extra?
No, like I said at the start, it's 2 weeks free, so we've got a lot of catching up to do.
it's got to really, really bring the big sticks out.
All right, let's get back to some movie chat. So, Star Wars news. We always have a bit of Star Wars news because it's another big year for the franchise with Rogue One coming out in December. But lots of rumours of it possibly being in trouble, Steve.
Yeah, just after our last podcast recording, news broke that the first cut of Rogue One had been watched by executives at Disney, and they had asked for 4 weeks of reshoots. Which 4 weeks is a long time, by the way. I mean, most films only shoot for about 8 to 10 weeks, so that's a lot of reshoots, and that started a whole rumor mill about that the film was in trouble, that they didn't like it, that it was too dark, too grim. Scenes with Vader were brutal, which sounds great to me. I mean, I thought the whole point of these anthology films was to do things that were tonally different from the Star Wars films, but Disney apparently wants something that's going to be more that matches the Star Wars films tonally better, because apparently this film is going to end running right into Star Wars. So
10 minutes before.
10 minutes apparently. I don't know whether that's true, but yeah. So okay, I mean, presumably Gareth Edwards has made the film he set out to make and agreed to make with the studio based upon the screenplay. But there was talk about Christopher McQuarrie being brought in to help him direct it. Although that's untrue. Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote The Usual Suspects, did do a rewrite on the script at the very last minute. So apparently Gareth Edwards was working with a changing script, which can't have been easy for him. But Tony Gilroy, who wrote the Bourne movies, has come on board to help out with the rewrites. So what they're trying to do by the looks of it is just adjust the tones. And now just the tone slightly, so it's a bit lighter in places, because apparently it was quite grim and dark.
But that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see.
I know, exactly. I'm thinking, that's good, isn't it? I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to see. Everyone loved the trailer, didn't they?
So maybe Lucas was right all along in putting his own money into these things and making the films he wanted, although the prequels were bloody awful.
Yeah, but
it's still, he didn't have the studio interfering.
No laughs in that film, is there? That's pretty grim.
Yeah. But
he did dialogue either. But
but he didn't have studio interference,
No, exactly. Anyway, the thing is, I think this has all been blown out of proportion. I think the plan was always to do a rough cut, check it out, and then most modern films now will schedule a period of reshoots to pick up shots, fix a few things, change things in the edit, this sort of stuff. It's pretty common. They did it on A Force Awakens, for example. What's unusual is the length of time. 4 weeks is quite a long time for reshoots. But apparently, what happened was they were supposed to do the reshoots earlier this year, but they got delayed. And because, the cast members will go off and do other things, they're all working on other films, getting everybody back together again in a 2 week period was impossible. So they've had to do it over a longer period because they couldn't get all the actors at the same time. That's apparently what actually happened. So what happened is probably things aren't quite as grim as were being made out on the internet. It's just, they always plan to do reshoots. They may be adjusting it tonally as well, to bring it more in line with Star Wars. If it's going to end 10 minutes before, then you don't want a massive shift in tone, do you, really, from something that's going to go straight to another film? So I think it's probably been blown out of proportion slightly. But having said that, I was talking about it with a friend of mine, and he said, what? Gareth Edwards isn't very good.
No, is this the same friend that you discussed earlier on? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You've only got the one, haven't you?
We both love Monsters, his low budget, tiny budget film he made. A great little film. I don't think Godzilla's particularly good, nor was my friend. And my friend said, maybe he just isn't a very good director with big budget stuff. Maybe they've realised that now and they made a mistake hiring him in the first place. And that's why they're going panicking. Could be possible. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll find out in December. But I'm still quite optimistic it's going to be a fun movie. And, the fact it's got Vader in it can't be too bad, can it?
Yeah, I think the proof will be in the pudding. And like you say, I'll make my own judgments on it when we get to see it.
And not that long away now, is it? Yeah, we're now June, so only 5-6 months.
You'll be queuing up for this one, Ed.
Queuing, I try not to queue. As you know, I dislike other people at the cinema intensely. I'll go.
On your birthday?
Well, quite possibly. Is this IMAX only again? Or rather, sorry, is it at 3D only if it's in IMAX? Or is that...
I have no idea. Do you know what I did know? It's interesting is that they shot some of it on 65mm. I don't mean by that IMAX necessarily, but actually we're using ultra widescreen, and 2.75 to 1, 2.76 to 1 Super Vanavision that they used on The Hateful Eight. Apparently some of this was shot using Super Vanavision as well.
Maybe they just had spare film that was left over.
Yeah,
that
I don't know.
Yeah, opened it up, saw it was a bit different. Yeah, it'll do.
Gigantic lens on the front.
but at least, again, it's been shot on film and not digital. So
yeah, no, I mean, I'm still really looking forward to it. I'm quite excited, actually. I think a good old war film, that's what we need.
Okay. Again, we've run out of time, as always happens on these things. So my thanks to Mark Botwright.
I could have been at a barbecue.
Down the toilet.
Yeah, you could have. Ed Selley.
Oh God, I hope they bring back Elvis.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Time's up.
And Steve Weathers.
All you need is love.
Yeah, you can keep that to yourself.
And a quiet setting on your mobile phone.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and video, and of course you can leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes because next week is the end of the month, so you've only got 7 days from now to leave us those 5-star ratings and tell us why you like the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next week after England have been kicked out of the Euros.